So I'm standing here today, not in front of a bookshelf, but with a really heavy heart. We've all seen the images on the news, the devastating wildfires tearing through communities, leaving behind nothing but ash and heartache. And I know, for some of you watching this, those images are your reality. Losing your home in a fire is like losing a part of yourself. It's overwhelming, confusing, and it's okay to feel lost. But here's the thing, even though it feels like the world is ending, there are steps you can take, things you can do to start rebuilding your life. I know it seems impossible now, like climbing Mount Everest after a marathon. But trust me, it's possible. In this video, we're going to go through a clear, step-by-step recovery plan. We'll talk about dealing with insurance, finding temporary housing, and accessing the resources available to you. You're not alone in this, and I want you to know that there is hope, even in the ashes. Okay, I know this probably feels like the last thing you want to do right now, but trust me, it's the most important first step. Your insurance company is your first point of contact after a fire. They need to know what happened so they can start the claims process. Now, I know dealing with insurance companies can feel like navigating a labyrinth blindfolded, but take a deep breath. You've got this. Before you call, find your insurance policy. I know, easier said than done after a fire, but if you have any digital copies or maybe a family member has a copy, try to get your hands on it. The policy outlines your coverage, what they'll pay for, and it's important to understand that before you talk to them. And write this down. Make sure you request a complete copy of your policy from the insurance company if you don't have one. They're legally obligated to give you one, and you'll need it for reference throughout this whole process. It's also a good idea to have a notebook handy to jot down notes during your calls. Write down the date and time, the name of the person you spoke to, and summarize what was discussed. This documentation is going to be your best friend throughout this process. Remember, you're not alone in this. Take it one step at a time and we'll get through this together. Okay, so you've contacted your insurance company, you've taken a deep breath. Now let's talk about something called additional living expenses, or AIL for short. This is where things get a little bit hopeful. Many homeowners' insurance policies include AIL coverage, and this is designed to help you with the costs of living while your home is being rebuilt. Think of it as a safety net, catching you when you need it most. AIL can cover things like temporary housing, restaurant meals, pet boarding, even laundry services. Basically, it helps cover the costs you wouldn't normally have if you were still living in your home. Now, the amount of AIL coverage you have varies depending on your specific policy, so this is where that copy we talked about earlier comes in handy. Dust it off, find the section on AIL, and see what your limits are. And here's a pro tip. Keep meticulous records of every single expense you incur because of the fire. Keep your receipts, write down every dollar you spend because you'll need this documentation when you file your AIL claim. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about your coverage, the better equipped you'll be to navigate this process. Okay, I know this sounds tedious, but trust me, it's crucial. Remember that notebook we talked about earlier? Keep it close because you're going to become best friends with it. Every phone call, every email, every interaction you have with your insurance company, write it down. Date, time, name of the representative, and a summary of the conversation. Think of it like this. You're creating a paper trail, a breadcrumb trail leading back to the truth. If there are any discrepancies later on, any disagreements about what was said or agreed upon, you have a written record to back you up. And believe me, having that documentation can make all the difference in the world. It's also a good idea to keep a running list of questions you have for your insurance company. As you go through this process, new questions will pop up, and it's easy to forget them in the midst of everything else. Write them down so you don't forget to ask. Remember, you're advocating for yourself here. Documentation is your superpower. Use it wisely. Chapter 4. Rebuilding. Finding a contractor. You can trust. Okay, so you've navigated the insurance labyrinth, you're starting to get a handle on things, and now it's time to think about rebuilding. I know it seems daunting, but remember, you've overcome the hardest part already. The first step in the rebuilding process is finding a reputable contractor. This is a big decision, so don't rush into it. Ask friends, family, neighbors for recommendations. Look for contractors who are licensed, insured, and experienced in rebuilding after fires. Once you've found a few potential candidates, get estimates from each of them. And don't just focus on the bottom line. Look at what's included in the estimate, the materials they'll be using, the timeline for completion. Remember, This is your home we're talking about. You want to make sure it's rebuilt properly and safely. And here's a pro tip: check with your local building department to see if there are any specific codes or regulations you need to be aware of when rebuilding after a fire. Knowledge is power, my friends. Chapter 5. Read before you sign. Contracts are serious business. Okay, so you found a contractor you trust, you've got your estimates in hand, and now it's time to talk contracts. This is where things can get a little tricky, so listen up. Before you sign anything, read the contract carefully, and I mean really carefully. I know contracts are about as exciting as watching paint dry, but this document outlines the entire agreement between you and the contractor. Make sure you understand everything in it. If there's anything you don't understand, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. It's better to ask questions now than to regret not asking later. If you're feeling overwhelmed, consider having a lawyer or advocate review the contract with you. They can help you understand the legal jargon and make sure your rights are protected. Remember, this is a big decision. Don't rush into anything. Take your time, ask questions, and make sure you're comfortable with every single word before you sign on the dotted line. Chapter 6. Finding help. You are not alone in this. Okay, so we've talked about insurance, contractors, contracts, and it's a lot, I know. But here's the thing, you don't have to go through this alone. There are amazing organizations out there whose sole purpose is to help people like you who have been affected by disasters. The American Red Cross, for example, provides emergency shelter, food, and emotional support to those who have lost their homes. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, offers financial assistance to help with housing, repairs, and other essential needs. And then there are organizations like United Policyholders, a nonprofit that provides free information and advice to help you navigate the insurance claims process. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. These organizations are here for a reason, and they can provide invaluable support during this difficult time. Remember, asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It takes courage to admit you need help, and there's no shame in doing so. You're not alone in this. Reach out, connect with these organizations, and let them help you through this. Chapter 7. Federal Assistance, Navigating FEMA. It's not as scary as it sounds. Okay, so you've contacted your insurance company, you're working with a contractor, but you still need help. That's where FEMA comes in. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is like the cavalry arriving just when you need them most. If your area has been declared a federal disaster area, you might be eligible for financial assistance from FEMA. This assistance can help with things like temporary housing, home repairs, replacement of essential household items, even medical and dental expenses. Now I know dealing with government agencies can seem daunting, but trust me, FEMA is here to help. The first step is to register for assistance. You can do this online at disasterassistance.gov, or by calling FEMA directly. They'll ask you a series of questions about your situation and the damages you've sustained. Be prepared to provide documentation, like photos of the damage, insurance information, and proof of residency. FEMA's website also has a ton of helpful resources, including information on how to apply for assistance, what to expect after you apply, and answers to frequently asked questions. Remember, you're not alone in this. FEMA is here to help you get back on your feet. From ashes to hope, your journey starts now. I know it's hard to believe right now, but it's true. Even after the most devastating fire, life does go on. It's going to be a long road to recovery, filled with paperwork, phone calls, and moments where you just want to scream into the void. But you are strong, you are resilient, and you will get through this. Remember to take things one day at a time. Celebrate the small victories, practice self-care, and don't be afraid to lean on your support system. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, come back to this video. Let it be your guide, your reminder that you are not alone. There is hope, even in the ashes. Now go out there and start rebuilding your life, one brick at a time. You've got this.